From Luffy's strangest form to the most powerful form in anime, these are all of Luffy's power forms explained. And first, we gotta talk about Luffy's most overpowered form, because this form was so powerful, we've only seen it once. See, Luffy got himself into some trouble and ended up in a Davy back fight, which means if Luffy loses, they'd have to give up a whole crew member. But to help win the fight, Usopp gave him a secret item that would make Luffy's punches deadly. And that item is this afro. And when Luffy put it on, he was unstoppable, winning him the fight against Foxy. And fans theorize that the afro causes immense power due to other strong characters that also have it. So it's more than just an epic fashion statement. But now we gotta talk about Luffy's smartest form. Because believe it or not, Luffy actually used a big brain play to defeat a warlord. Crocodile has the Sansan Logia devil fruit, which means you can't hit him. But when Luffy noticed that he could use water to cause damage to Crocodile, it was over for Croc Boy. But things didn't go exactly to plan because Luffy actually lost. But not long after, he came back and just water gunned Crocodile down. And shockingly, Crocodile thought Luffy was using Haki at first, but Luffy wouldn't learn Haki till 400 chapters later. But his power forms get even bigger than that. Quite literally, because in episode 578, we get Luffy's Titan form. You see, this girl has the mini devil fruit, which lets her shrink to an ant but grow into a giant. And when Luffy was unconscious, she snuck into his body to explore him from the inside. But shockingly, this didn't work out as planned, and it only made this disturbingly tall Luffy Titan form. You see, her plan didn't work because, well, Luffy's made out of rubber, so all it did was expand his body, causing this destructive giant that can take on full-on missiles to the back of the head. Now, later in this video, we'll show you Luffy's strongest form, so stick around till then. But what about his rarest? And that brings us to Luffy's nightmare form. To defeat Gecko Moria, Luffy had to do some strange things. He ended up sucking hundreds of souls to get his most terrifying form yet, turning him into this blue, buff, and very unhappy monster thing. And many fans speculate that this might be one of Luffy's strongest forms yet. They might be right, because he was actually able to defeat this giant zombie all by himself in just under 10 minutes. But sadly, we'll probably never see Nightmare Luffy ever again. But we'll definitely see this next form return, because people never see Nightmare Luffy ever again. But we'll definitely see this next form return, because people are calling this the most annoying power form in Luffy's arsenal. When the crew was battling on Sky Island, Luffy had an interesting battle with Enel. You see, Enel ate the Rumble fruit, which is a Logia devil fruit that turns the user into a lightning human. And so Enel was putting his full power into his attacks. Luffy just stood there and took it like a champ. This is because rubber doesn't conduct electricity. So Enel's attacks on Luffy were completely pointless. I mean, just look at this fluid movement from Luffy, dude. And because of this, fans online started calling this Luffy's plot armor form. Like, it's not official or anything, but like, it might as well be. Because if you think about it, it kind of definitely is his plot armor form. But now we're getting into the meat and potatoes, for this next form needs no introduction as it's one of Luffy's first ever forms. If we go all the way back to 700 chapters in the Enies Lobby arc where Luffy and his crew are trying to save Robin, but Blue Ano, a CP9 member, is standing in their way, this is where Luffy introduces one of the most iconic forms, not in just One Piece, but in anime, Gear 2. Gear 2 allows Luffy to move at high speeds, fast enough that his opponents can't even see. He starts off by pumping his legs super fast like you're revving a bike, making his blood flow faster and faster, boosting his strength and speed. Now, there was an unfortunate drawback to using this form. Every time Luffy would use this gear form, he would lose a little bit of his lifespan every time, making it a huge downside to using it. Now, another thing that's huge is this next power form, because in the same arc, we get another gear form. In episode 304, while fighting the strongest CP9 agent, Luffy was beat. He used up so much energy from using Gear Second so much, he had to come up with a plan. Luckily, Luffy had something big up his sleeves, showing us the first use of Gear Third. He blows into his thumb, causing his bones and muscles to inflate into a giant hand, giving him immense strength to punch an enormous hole through a brick wall, and even stomping a marine battleship in an instant. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't come with drawbacks, which leads us into Luffy's next form. You see, by using Gear Third, yeah, he'd blow up his arms and legs into powerful weapons, but he's gotta deflate at some point, right? Since all the air is leaving him all at once, too much would get out. So when Luffy would finally deflate, he'd turn into what I like to dub Chibi Luffy. Chibi Luffy can't do much, and Luffy has to stay in this chibi form for however long he used Gear 3rd. But how about we go from cute chibi to strange not chibi? This is a form I bet you don't remember. You see, during the Impel Down arc, when Luffy was trying to save Ace in jail, Luffy found himself going up against the Chief Warden. And since he has the Venom fruit, which causes him to control deadly toxin, Luffy couldn't touch him without getting poison all over him. So to solve this, Mr. 3 coated Luffy's feet and hands with clay that not even the venom could get through, helping Luffy fight off Magellan without taking any serious damage. We all know how that turned out before, but if you look closely, you can see that the shape of Luffy's hands are in the shape of boxing gloves, creating the name for this special form, Champion Luffy. Now, next up is Luffy's hockey forms, which is where things start getting serious. During the 2-year time skip, Luffy learned all 3 types of hockey: Observation, Armament, and Conquerors. The first one he learned was Observation Hockey, and Luffy uses it to see attacks coming before they even happen, which is super helpful in dodging them. It's like having a 6th sense or cheat code in a game. As for Armament Hockey, it's like having invisible armor or turning your body into straight up steel. When Luffy fights, he can use this hockey to make his punches super strong and even protect himself from getting hurt. It's perfect for battles where Luffy needs a little extra oomph in his punches, or when he needs to defend against really oomphy attacks. Now for Conquerors, think about being so strong that when you walk into a room, everyone who isn't as brave as you just faints. That's basically what Conqueror's hockey is like. It's a rare power that only certain people are born with, and so Luffy uses it to knock out weaker enemies without even having to touch them. Only a few people have this power, and it shows that Luffy has the heart of a leader. Now, believe it or not, that's not even the only thing hockey can do. In these next forms, Luffy uses hockey to enhance his gear forms. When Luffy realized he needed to get stronger to protect his friends, he trained very hard with Rayleigh, who was the right-hand man of the Pirate King back in the day. Rayleigh taught Luffy how to use hockey, and Luffy, being super creative, combined hockey with his rubber powers to create Gear 4. Gear 4 is split up into different forms in and of itself, and we're going to start with the Bounce Man variant. Back in episode 726, when fighting Doflamingo, none of Luffy's usual moves were working, but then he showed off an interesting transformation, to say the least. When Luffy turned into Bounce Man, he became so powerful that he could bounce around super fast and hit like a truck while doing so. Bounce Man allowed Luffy to fly at top speeds and have an increase in power with like every bounce. The only downside to Bounce Man was that it used up a lot of energy and hockey, meaning he'd have to rest for a while before using it again. Moving on to the sharpest Gear 4 form, Snake Man. Back in episode 870, Luffy used this form in a fight against Katakuri, who was one of the toughest guys Luffy ever fought and who was worth over 1 billion berries. Katakuri specialized in observation hockey, which gave him the power of future sight, as mentioned previously, meaning he knew Luffy's every move before he even made him, which made him super hard to hit, as you can imagine. So Luffy, holding his own trump card, used Snake Man to make his attacks unpredictable and super speedy. The only downside to Snake Man was that it left Luffy's body vulnerable to any other attacks. But this last Gear 4 transformation will make you frackin' piss yourself! During his fight with Charlotte Cracker on Whole Cake Island, Luffy just couldn't get to him. He kept fighting Cracker's biscuit soldiers one by one, but they just kept spawning in. That's when Nami came in clutch and formed this perfect idea to just eat his way through, blessing us with the iconic Gear 4 Tank Man. This made him super huge and strong enough to blast Cracker away like a shooting cannonball. Strange way to win, but hey, it worked, right? Now we've talked about some of Luffy's more powerful forms, but what about his base form? Guys, don't sell short the base form. It's pretty awesome because of his unique powers from eating the Gum fruit, which we now know is the human fruit model Nika. This devil fruit made his body all rubbery, allowing him to stretch like elastic, which is super handy in a bunch of different situations. There are a couple of different moves Luffy loves to use. For example, Gum Pistol. This is Luffy's go-to move, where he stretches his arm way back and then snaps it forward recoil style to punch his enemy super hard, like a slingshot with his fist. A fist shot. a sling fist. There's also Gum Gum Balloon, where Luffy puffs his body up to bounce back attack, sort of cushion a fall, and his strongest base form attack, Gum Gum Bazooka, where Luffy stretches both arms way back, then launches them forward to double punch his enemies. Imagine getting hit by 2 cannonballs at once. You wouldn't survive the first ball, surely not 2. That's what it feels like. Luffy has used his base form in countless fights, relying on his creativity with his rubber abilities to outsmart and, more importantly, outpunch his opponents. From battling Marines to clashing with pirates like Buggy the Clown and Arlong, Luffy's base form has been enough to see him through a lot of early challenges. But even heroes face setbacks, and Luffy is no exception. His rubber powers couldn't save him every time. For example, the first time Luffy met Smoker, a Marine with smoke powers, go figure, Luffy couldn't even touch him because of Smoker's Logia-type Devil Fruit powers. He had to depend on his other form from earlier, the Plot Armor form. See, it's a real thing! Or when Luffy first encountered Aokiji, a Marine admiral with ice powers. Luffy was completely outmatched and defeated, showing that there was a huge gap in their strengths. But Luffy's base form shows us that being a hero isn't just about having the strongest powers, it's about never giving up, no matter how tough the enemy is. Now, before getting into Luffy's strongest form, which all of you probably came here for, make sure you subscribe for more epic One Piece content like this. At last, the next form that literally broke the anime community, Gear 5, or Gear 5th. A game-changing power-up for Luffy where his already rubbery body gets even stronger and he can do some pretty wacky stuff, like changing the world around him to act like rubber too. This power comes from the special fruit he ate as a kid, the Hito Hito no Mi, Model Nika. But it's like he found a hidden feature nobody knew about, like an actual cheat code. He figured out how to use Gear 5 during the most epicest of showdowns with Kaido. But what ended up happening is Luffy actually lost and basically died. But not long after, you can hear the drums of liberation. And here it is, Luffy with Gear 5. And he wasn't just fighting with punches and kicks like I've been saying for the past 11, almost 12 minutes. Oh no, he was making the very ground itself bouncy and even grabbing lightning out of the sky like Zeus. Gear 5 turns Luffy into the warrior of liberation, which sounds super cool, and he's not just fighting for himself, but for everyone's freedom to be happy and live without fear. Plus, in Gear 5, Luffy looks different too. His hair and clothes change color, even gets these swirly looking eyes that make him look super intense. With Gear 5, Luffy can do things that seem straight out of a cartoon, otherwise known as the Toon Force. He can stretch and twist in ways that are even crazier than ever before, making it really hard for anyone to hurt him. He can also make his arms and legs huge without having to blow them up like balloons, which is a neat trick. And the best part, he can run through the air by making his legs spin super fast, which is as awesome as it sounds. But Gear 5 isn't just about being strong. No, Luffy can change things around him, like I've been saying, to be bouncy like rubber, which is very handy in a fight, to say the least. He even bounced back a super powerful attack from Kaido, using the roof like a trampoline. And if someone tries to eat him, Luffy just makes them all stretchy and bouncy inside, which is disgusting but cool at the same time. Even though Gear 5 is super powerful, it's not something Luffy can use all the time, and uses up a lot of energy, more than any other form, and after using it, Luffy gets super tired. Like Gear 2, draining his lifespan. But of course it's worth it, because with Gear 5, he can take on the toughest of enemies and protect his friends, showing everyone that he's a true hero. Now, did you know that we already know what Luffy will look like when he finds the One Piece? Well, Oda actually drew Luffy if he found the One Piece, and he looks crazy strong. But then again, he also drew him if he didn't find the One Piece, and that's just sad. But that is by and large not even close to the saddest thing in One Piece. Click this video right here if you want to see all the saddest backstories.